typical practice for the land use committee, we record. Hi guys, come on in. We record our sections of our meetings so that we are able to share it with the community after the fact. So, a couple more people here. Welcome, you guys. Do you want to do quick introductions?
Sure. I'm Kimby. We just moved into the neighborhood a couple months ago, so we figured we should check out a community meeting. We saw that you guys had a bicycle plan meeting, which we were very interested in.
Oh, perfect timing. Yeah, perfect timing.
Yeah, almost started, but not quite.
Yeah.
On that part.
Yeah, Ethan. Yeah, we live just on the other side of the lake. Excited to see what goes on and hopefully be part of this more often.
Okay, well, welcome. With that, I am going to turn it over to Jimmy to give us an update on the bike plan and also just to say welcome back. Because Jimmy's been a frequent flyer here at Land Use, and we appreciate it.
And Jimmy is chief planner with St. Paul Public Works.
Yes. Yep, that's right.
Yeah, good to see everybody. Thanks for allowing me to attend virtually. Yeah, I'm here to talk about the St. Paul Bicycle Plan update. Max and Brett have probably seen some version of this already. So thanks for letting me go, Max and Brett. I have a presentation that can be kind of longer, and I'm not going to give that whole presentation tonight because I know there's another agenda item, and I want to leave plenty of time for questions and answers and discussion. So I guess, I'm going to give this kind of shortened version, probably bounce around on the presentation, presentation a bit. But if you take away one thing from this presentation, it's this webpage. The webpage is listed at the top, but the shortened version is stpaul.gov/bike plan, which if someone is near a keyboard, it would be great if you could put that in the chat, stpaul.gov/bike plan. And it'll take you to this webpage. And on this webpage, you see, this is basically where everything is. There is a longer version of the presentation I'm about to give that's recorded. It's very similar, except it goes into more detail and kind of spends some more time on all these slides. The actual the draft version of this updated bicycle plan is posted here. You can read the entire plan. It's about 85 pages, excluding the appendix. And then there's also an executive summary that has kind of the main recommendations. Thanks a lot, Maggie. Yeah, that's where you go. The most important thing over the next, we are taking feedback till July, the end of July. Previously it was advertised at end of June. We're extending that a little bit because I have some more events to attend. On here, you can review the most important part of the bicycle plan, which is the planned network. I'll get to that in a second. There's also another survey. So this is open to July 31st. So I guess if thank you to whomever on the call has and the meeting has already looked at this and provided feedback. And if you haven't already, please do that before the end of July. So here we are. I'm going to kind of bounce around this presentation a little bit. But we are kind of at the tail end of this planning process. It started back at the end of 2021, and I came to talk to you all then. And there were some other outreach events, some other engagement, driving folks to an online survey. That was kind of at the height of the pandemic. So we didn't get a lot of in-person events, but there was a lot of virtual engagement, driving people to this one survey, asking, what do you want to see in the bicycle plan update? And then in 2022, so basically all of last year, we worked internally on taking that feedback and drafting a bicycle plan update. And that's kind of where we are now. Now we're sharing that draft with you all in hopes that the plan is to take the feedback we hear during this phase, make some final updates to the plan, and then take it to City Council for their consideration to be adopted probably at the end of August. So that will be another chance for you to see whatever final version we bring to City Council. It will be a formal public hearing, so it will be noticed with a certain amount of time in advance of the meeting. You can go to City Council chambers and express your support or your opposition for any of the recommendations. You can write into your council member that way, or call and leave a voicemail also. So there will be one more chance to weigh in on this before City Council considers it. So I keep on telling you that this is an update. We do have an existing bicycle plan. It was adopted in 2015, and the goal of that and the goal of this update is the same. It provides a direction for the development of a network of bikeways, bike facilities. I kind of use those two terms interchangeably. Bike facilities and bikeways are just any kind of generic term for spaces for people biking. So there was a lot of engagement that went into our current plan, and it recommends that it be updated with some frequency, which is what we're doing right now. What is a bike plan? How do we use it? Why should we care about it? We use it. I use it all the time. Parks and Recreation Department also references it. When we have street projects that give us the opportunity to change what a street looks like, or what a park looks like, or what a railroad corridor looks like, we reference the bike plan. Also with new development, so great examples would be something like the Heights, or what was it called before? The golf course in the far northeast corner. And Highland Bridge is another example. The Ford site is another example where new developments give us the opportunity to build new streets. And then transit projects. So I work on a lot of big transit projects, and those often result in big changes to the street. So that's our chance to implement what the bike plan says and recommends. And probably the most important thing that came out of the bike plan, and the same is true for this update, is the planned bicycle network. And this is the current bike network. So we have a draft version of this out for circulation that we'll talk about in a second, but it all starts here. This is the current bike plan, and will remain the planned network until City Council adopts the new plan. And this shows streets and parks in St. Paul, and there are lines on those streets that represent planned bike facilities or bikeways. And this is what we reference when we have opportunities to change our streets. We look at this and say, what does the bike plan say? You'll notice that there are generally there are mostly four different colored lines. And those represent different bikeways, different ways that bicyclists interact with other road users. And those same four types will remain, or do remain, in the draft that's out right now. The big difference is the amount of each one of those different bikeway types, or the different colors. And I'll go into that in a second. But this is kind of where we start. This is the current bike plan. This is what existed in 2015. So before we adopted the current bike plan, this is what existed in 2015. And we've made a lot of progress since then. We've added about 60 miles of bikeways. I'm looking at a couple of them that either go through or are in District 10. Here's Como along the fairgrounds. Here's Wheelock east of Como Lake. Here's Pelham down in Union Park. And here's Fairview up in my neighborhood in Hamlin Midway. And the bike plan, our current bike plan, when it was first adopted, we had priorities. We said, let's focus on, this is a bike plan is a long range document. So in terms of time frame, so it's good to identify priorities. And we did that as part of the first bike plan, the current bike plan. We said, let's focus on the Grand Round, which is this really great network of separated bikeways that our partners in Parks and Rec helped us implement and plan for. So that was one big kind of sub network, I guess, that we wanted to focus on, and we did focus a lot on that over the past 8 years. The other one is this kind of sub network in downtown St. Paul called the Capital City Bikeway. And we've built several legs of that, several segments of that, and we have some projects coming up in the next 5 years to build that out even more fully. So this is our chance to, with this update, to identify some new priorities that we can tackle just like we did these ones. I think this is important to mention. Some of you may have seen this kind of some similar graphic like this before. This was developed at the Portland Department of Transportation some time ago. And this has since been kind of supported by research that says, okay, if you were to take everyone in the population, there'd be about 35% of people who would say, I'm not really going to bike. I don't care what you do. You could, there's nothing that's going to make me bike. No way, no how. There's this other portion of folks that are up at the very confident end, maybe 12, 13% of those people that say, I'm going to bike in the street on Snelling Avenue. It doesn't matter. You don't need to give me any space. I'm very, very confident, and I can ride in any space on any street. But there's this whole middle part that, again, this has been supported by research that says, I would really like to bike more or start biking, but I just don't feel safe biking. So I'm interested, but I'm concerned. And this is really what we're trying to get new people riding, because we do have a lot of strong and confident bikers in St. Paul. We have probably a lot of people that are no way, no how, but these are the kind of people that we're trying to get on bikes, and that's what the point of this bicycle plan update is. Okay, moving forward. So what is the focus of the update? I guess in a few words, the biggest change you will see in the update is recommending more separated bikeways. And separated bikeways are those that have some sort of physical separation between people driving and people biking. And our current bike plan is a little bit out of date with things like state and federal best practice. State and federal best practice, both at FHWA, the Federal Highway Administration, and the MnDOT would recommend more separated bikeways given the characteristics of our streets in St. Paul. So we wanted to bring it up to kind of consistency with state and federal best practice. We also know that that streets in St. Paul, if they're constructed with a separated bikeway, that also means that they're safer for people walking and people driving. A great example that I reference pretty frequently is on Como, just east of Snelling Avenue. And if you basically between Hamlin and Snelling, if you recall, before the city reconstructed that section of Como, there were bike lanes in the street. And those bike lanes were good for people who were confident bicyclists. But when we reconstructed the street, we took the space that was in those bike lanes and we put it, outside of the curb. And that meant that the road actually could be built more narrow, which means slower traffic speeds, and it also means shorter distances for people walking. So separated bikeways means safer streets for everyone. We do have local policy guidance from the St. Paul Climate Action and Resilience Plan from December 2019. I would suggest anyone to check that out. This is the policy guidance that specifically directs the Department of Public Works, who I work for, to update the bicycle plan with more separated facilities. And then finally, we've just heard from many community members, like I said, that have said, hey, I'd love to bike more. I just want separated bikeways because they make me feel safer. I can bike with my young kids. I can bike with my grandparents. We also want to use this, as I mentioned, to the bike plan update to identify new priorities. So as I mentioned, the Grand Round and the Capital City Bikeway were really big priorities to come out of the first plan, and now we want to identify some new priorities. And then finally, we are not going to totally address all the winter maintenance concerns for people biking as part of this plan, but it's my hope that in the coming years, or hopefully soon, we'll kind of we'll create more of a maintenance strategy for our bike network so people can ride all year round. And that recommendation is in the draft plan. Okay, I want to get to the plan, the plan network. So what did we do in 2022? We looked at this current planned network and we asked ourselves, is the right bikeway type on the right street? Are we making the best connections that we can with safe and comfortable connections? And that's really what we did in basically all of 2022. And so you'll notice if you look at the new plan, I'll show up here in a second, and that's posted online at stpaul.gov/bike plan. You'll notice that the same 4 bikeway types exist. We have shared lanes, which we really reduced the amount of shared lanes that we're recommending. We have bicycle boulevards in the planned network, which are shared spaces by people biking and people driving, but on low volume neighborhood streets, ideally with kind of traffic calming elements built into the street. We have bike lanes still, those aren't going away, which are, you all are familiar with, just striped bike lanes. But the biggest change are more recommended separated bikeways. And that's what's shown in the draft plan. And I don't expect you to digest all of this. I have a zoomed in portion of just the District 10 that I can put up on screen when we discuss. But if you were to compare the current plan to this plan, the updated proposed plan, you would notice a lot more green lines, which are the separated bikeways and paths. Just a couple more slides and then I'd like to discuss. We also have priorities identified. So, where do we want, this is, like I said, this is a long range plan. If, at the rate and the current funding that we have now, if we were to reconstruct this over time, the streets identified in here, it could take 40, 50 years. So it's really important to identify shorter term priorities, which are shown on screen. And we can zoom in on when we discuss. So just a couple more things. Here's another, this is the timeline I mentioned. We are right here. The plan is to collect feedback on the draft plan, make some final changes, and then take it to City Council probably at the end of August. And that'll be a public hearing for you all to weigh in. And also, I just want to mention again, stpaul.gov/bike plan. Here is the plan. You can open it up and read it word for word. There's also an interactive way to share comments on the planned bike network. You can already see that hundreds of comments have already been dropped on this. This is the exact same map and priorities that are shown kind of in this static map. But you can go in, my hope would be that people find where they work and find where they live and find where they go to school and look at how they might get there in the future and look at what changes to the streets in my neighborhood are called for in the bike plan. So I think with that, oh, thanks a lot, Maggie, putting a lot of great stuff in the chat. I think with that, we can open it up for questions or comments.
Yeah, thank you, Jimmy. We appreciate the update there. So I think I'm gonna leave you on your sharing a screen so that you can reference slides if you want based on questions. But at this point, I will open it up to folks to ask questions that you might have or share any feedback or comments. The one thing I'll throw out here is I know right after the grand round bike hubs went up around Como Park, where we had the little like service stations just to the south of the pavilion and on the east side of the lake there. We got a lot of questions about those, like who maintains them? Is that part of the city bike plan? Is that part of a state or county bike plan? Kind of trying to figure out, just people wondering like where does that come from and how, like who takes care of it basically.
Yeah, that would be a question for my friends in Parks and Recreation, because I would say that they do, I think, right, Brett?
I'm sorry, I was looking at something else. Can you repeat yourself?
Oh yeah, just who the kiosks here as part of the Grand Round. Those are kind of owned and operated and maintained by Parks and Recreation Department.
Yeah, so this was a project we're actively working on. I think most of them have been installed, but they are part of the 8 to 80 project. And these nodes were identified in that process. So I think the first phases of the trail went in, and then these are going in, and would be maintained by Parks.
Thanks, Brett.
So, I have just a few things, but I don't want to talk, but I'll jump in though. For me, like, I'm in that middle, I'm in the big 54% group. I used to ride my bike all the time when I lived in Madison, because I could get to things pretty easily, and I could get to things like, that I wanted to get to, like the grocery or whatever. How are you factoring, like right now, you know, there are a lot of people who ride bikes and they're doing it for commuting or they're doing it for exercise. For me, I want to ride my bike for a practical purpose. I want to go to Cub Foods or to Target. And how is that addressed in the plan? The people that want to use, the bike as a practical means of transportation to get to and from like key nodes or locations for practical purposes, for shopping a lot of times. So how was that? Because I looked at the map you had and I saw it going down Como toward downtown, but I didn't see something really going to Cub Foods in Roseville or Target, you know, Midway Target very easily. And I'm just wondering, how does that factor into the planning?
Yeah, I share that categorization with you. I like to bike to go to errands. So I don't know exactly where you live.
Right there, right? You're virtually pointing at where I am.
Okay, okay. I promise I didn't know that. But yeah, I mean, the point of this plan is to give someone a high quality separated. I'm sorry, it's not loading. A high quality separated bikeway. I think the spacing that we fell on is either a half a mile or a mile. And from anyone in the city. So yeah, we didn't say that there's this network for people who are riding for exercise, and then there's another network that we're planning for people who want to get to Target or Cub. The goal is to just give everybody, because sometimes you could be one person on the weekend that rides for a 60-mile-an-hour or 60-mile ride for exercise, and then the next day you could be going to the grocery store. So the point is to give everybody the opportunity, no matter where you live. So my suggestion for you, I mean, this is going to take a long time to build. What I would do according to this plan network would be ride down Hamlin, where we're planning a separated bikeway, to all the way to Target. That would be my route that I would suggest for you.
Right. Cool. So a question though, I think you're kind of answering it with this map, connecting up with neighboring cities. Like, so I go and you've got your plan, presumably you looked, and when I hit the city limits, it doesn't just end.
Right, so yeah, typically, yeah, what I did as part of this is looked at every adjoining neighboring cities bike plan also, to make sure that we're linking up with their network also.
Cool, thanks.
Thank you.
questions or comments?
I got one, Ethan Doyle here. Near the end, I believe you had mentioned changing the how many bike parking spots need to be per facility, whether it be residential or commercial. Is there going to be anything in there with recommendations on what to use? Something that's more securely fastened opposed to just a rack that's tossed on the ground?
For bike parking, you said, Ethan?
Yes.
Okay, and you were referencing the plan towards the end of the plan?
Yeah, I think it was in there. I
Yeah.
skimmed it earlier today, so I might have missed the answer to my question.
No, I really appreciate you looking through it. Yeah, so I handle bike parking at the city. And we do have in our zoning code, we have zoning code ordinances that mandate for new developments that they must include some amount of bicycle parking. But our bread and butter is, just because it's relatively inexpensive, are the hoop racks. We've started to do, kind of the upside down U ones. And those are great, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people's opinions, because it gives, kind of 2 points of contact. You can lean your bike up against it. But those are short-term park. I mean, anyone with an angle grinder could cut off those, the bolts, that if they really wanted to. So I would say this, I mean, as of right now, the city does not install kind of long-term, like lockered bicycle parking. And that's just because it costs quite a bit more. It costs more to maintain. But we do know our zoning code ordinance does have some mandates for private development.
Okay. I wasn't so concerned about the long term. That's really awesome. I appreciate the teams looking into it. I was looking for like a minimum of that hoop style as like the minimum in which they have to install, opposed to just like a loose rack that's not attached to anything.
Okay, I hear you. You mean like kind of the old ones that just are sitting on the concrete?
Yeah,
right.
You got it.
Yeah, so you'll see those at a lot of St. Paul public schools, sadly. Call those the wheel bender, because you put it in there and then your wheel gets bent if it gets kicked. No, our city standard is the hoop, or what's called the hitch, which is like a post in a circle. That's our city standard. That you'll still see racks out there that don't meet that standard, but that's because we're not actively removing bicycle racks.
Okay. As long as none new are going to be installed of that old style.
That's true. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Ooh. Sorry, Clara. Was that Clara? Do you have a question on the bikes?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Clara and Dolores just joined. And Dolores. Okay. Any other questions for Jimmy while we have him here?
Well, I had one, sorry, but you talked about bikes and cars and their interaction and all that. What about pedestrians? How do you think about paths, especially like paths and bikes sharing? Because I'm more frequently a pedestrian than a biker, and so bikers to me are hazardous to me as opposed to cars being hazardous to bikes. And just how do you plan for pedestrians?
Yeah. Well, we do have a St. Paul pedestrian plan, but there are examples of separated bikeways in St. Paul. A great example is along the fairgrounds on Como. And if you were to continue walking from your house and you were to go west underneath, past Snelling, and I have a picture of it in here. Here we go. This space right here in the bottom left-hand corner, this is along the Como Fairgrounds. And this is a space that is a bit different from the space just to the right. This space is what we call, this is kind of a distinction, but this is called a separated bike lane. And this is just for bicycles. You'll see, if you were to look in the background, you'd see sidewalk that's for pedestrians. When we don't have the space to fit each, to give each user their own space, we have constructed what's called a side path, which is shared by people biking and walking. But we always construct it, our minimum width is much bigger when it's something that's shared by people biking and walking, for the same reason that you just mentioned, that we want to make sure to give people plenty of space. So I think pedestrians and bicyclists can share space. It's all about the design of the space. And we want to make sure that we give a wider space if people are going to be sharing the space. Because there are going to be times where we want, I mean, I guess our theory is that it's better to separate people biking and driving if it means combining people biking and walking, because we know that any crash that happens is going to be much more serious between a car and a biker than it would be a biker and a pedestrian.
Yeah, okay, thanks. And it's not a
Yeah.
problem.
Thank
Except
you.
for a few maniacs, it's usually fine.
Oh, I agree. I think the point is, if you design the space well and wide enough, then there shouldn't be any conflicts. That's the hope.
Well, thank you, Jimmy. We appreciate your time and the updates on the bicycle plan. I'm sure that we will see you again here shortly. And meanwhile, if anyone is interested, please fill out that bike survey if you haven't yet, and then you can visit that website. And we've got that all on the District 10 community website as well, so you can go there for reference at any time.
Thank you so much for having me, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Thank
Jimmy.
you.
Thank you.
Yep, bye.
All right.